In the absence of Ukrainian and European officials, the two teams met on neutral ground in Saudi Arabia in an effort to end the devastating war in Ukraine, just days ahead of its 3-year anniversary.
Today is the first step of a long and difficult journey, but an important one. And President Trump is committed to bringing an end to this conflict, and as he said when he campaigned for president. And he wants it to end in a way that's fair. He wants it to end in a way that's sustainable and enduring, not that leads to another conflict in 2 to 3 years. That's not going to be easy to achieve, but he's the only one in the world that can begin that process. Donald Trump is the only leader in the world that could initiate that process, and today was the first step in that process.
Russia's top diplomat described the talks as useful.
At the beginning of our conversation, Marco Rubio emphasized the fundamental importance in international relations for each country to be guided by its national interests. We fully agreed with that. We also agreed that these national interests, of course, will not always coincide. But when they do coincide, it's very important to regulate any disagreement, not to let them reign free, and even more so, not to provoke confrontation, be it militarily or some other kind. The conversation was, I believe, very useful. We did not just listen, but we heard each other. And I have reason to believe that the American side has become more aware of our position, which we have once again set out in detail and with concrete examples based on President Putin's public speeches.
Are moving at breakneck speed after Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin spoke telephonically last week, followed by their foreign ministers and the subsequent face-to-face in Saudi Arabia that has so far excluded Europe, that views itself as a key stakeholder, and Ukraine that has warned it would not accept any outcome that does not involve Kyiv. But despite those concerns, Washington and Moscow appear ready to engage following years of distrust after the US and the EU worked in lockstep to isolate Russia after its invasion in 2022. Rubio says their goal is to end the conflict.
In order to bring an end to any conflict, there has to be concessions made by all sides. We're not going to predetermine what those are. We're certainly not going to negotiate this today or in a press conference for that matter. But, and there are other parties that have sanctions. The European Union is going to have to be at the table at some point because they have sanctions as well that have been imposed. So, but I guess the point here is the goal is, and we agreed on what the goal is to bring an end to this conflict in a way that's fair, enduring, sustainable, and acceptable to all parties involved.
The US shift in position, raising more questions than answers for many in continental Europe.
An optimistic take is to say, yeah, sure, the Americans are perfectly welcome to conduct bilateral diplomacy with whoever they want to, and they always have done. And if they see value in cooperating with the Russians on certain matters, as they have done throughout the course of the war, not always in the forefront, but in the background, continuing to keep diplomacy going, then fine. That's the sort of perhaps glass half full read on what's going on. But I think in particular there will be some very significant alarm in European capitals about what might be discussed with regards to the security of their continent, their home region.
Less alarm in other parts of the world, as indicated by China's foreign minister while chairing a session of the UN Security Council in New York.
The Ukraine crisis has dragged on for nearly 3 years. Recently, the momentum of seeking dialogue and negotiation is rising. Ever since the crisis broke out, China has advocated political settlement and promoted peace talks. China supports all efforts conducive to peace talks, and we will continue to follow the 4 points on what should be done put forward by President Xi Jinping and work with all countries, especially Global South countries, to make more objective, balanced, and rational voices heard, to build consensus for ending the conflict, and to pave the way for peace.
Tuesday's meeting in Riyadh, described as positive, upbeat, and constructive, expected to pave the way for a summit between Presidents Trump and Putin, but a date for such a meeting has yet to be confirmed or announced. Sherman Ricebees, SABC News, New York.